Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 481 of Ink in Your Veins. I am beyond thrilled to be here today with Elisabeth Sharp McKetta. This is, I love my interviews. I love the people I have on the show, but this is just one of my favorite interviews in a very, very long time. I actually can't remember if I said this on air or off, but I had been fighting, not feeling well the day I was meeting her. I almost canceled. And she brought me back to life. We talk about the joy of having homework forever. We talk about giving each project its own time, place, and treat. We talk about being portable. We talk about Rapunzeling. It's wonderful. You are going to love this. So it'll just be coming right at you right after I talk about this very quickly, because I just gave you the black Heron the other day, and my dog is yawning and asking to go out. So I will tell you that as this goes out, you may still have time to join the Write More, Worry Less 2-hour workshop on January 4th. You can go to rachelherron.com/no worries for that. And if you want to play around with doing 52 fun things, Adventure 52, picking something that gives you joy and doing it 52 times in 2025. You can join at the link in the show notes. You can join Adventure 52 with me. You can either do it on your own for free, or you can be part of the Patreon. I think it's at $5 a month and up, where we get to talk about the adventures that we are taking in the year 2025, because we are writers by God, but we are also writers who are living lives that we love, and then we love to be inside. And I would love to talk to you about that. I'm pretty excited about my art journaling that I'm going to be doing this year. What else is going on? Everybody in the families went home. We are free. The holidays are over. It was really, oh God, it's hard not to lie. Um, yeah, I posted some pictures on Facebook, and it is really lovely sometimes to be around family because we love them. But when family's hard, it's hard, y'all. So don't forget that as the holiday season draws to a close, all of the lovely photographs you're seeing on Instagram and Facebook, there are stories behind those. There are arguments, there are hurt feelings, there are tears, there's existential crises, there's religious and spiritual, emotional, physical crises behind photos. And we need to, I will not say we, I need to remember that I know what I love, and I know who I love, and I know why I love those things and those people. And I celebrate that on a daily basis anyway. And I'm so lucky that I get to do that. So I'm also so lucky that I get to sit here at my desk. I've been here all day. It's been fantastic. I love being at my desk. And I love writing, and I love that you are here because you are also a writer. So thank you. So here is Elisabeth's bio. You're going to love this interview. Elisabeth Sharp McKetta is an award-winning writer and writing teacher and mother of two, with a PhD on the intersections between fairy tales and autobiography, as well as a 7-year streak of writing weekly poems for strangers. She teaches writing for Oxford Department for Continuing Education and for Harvard Extension, where she won their highest teaching award. She has authored 13 books, most recently The Personal Growth Guide, Edit Your Life, based on the experience of living 3 years in a 275 square foot backyard guest house with her family of four, five if you count the lab, which I do. And the middle grade book Arc, set during the pandemic and described by Kirkus Reviews as infectiously hopeful. Elisabeth co-edited the anthology What Doesn't Kill Her, Women's Stories of Resilience, which Gloria Steinem described as stories that will help each of us to trust and tell our own. Her poetry and short work have been published widely, including the Poetry Review and Real Simple. Her work with myth and memoir has been spotlighted in Harvard Magazine. She and her family call Boise home and travel widely. Oh my gosh, you're in for such a treat, my writing friends. Here we go. Well, I could not be more pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
Elisabeth Sharp McKetta, she, her.
Thank you. We were already having fun off of the recording, so we said let's hit play and start recording this already fabulous conversation. So you live in Boise, I
I
hear.
am in Boise.
That is and that is where my wife's dad lives. She grew up there, right on Harrison Boulevard. So I know the town well, and it's such a beautiful little town.
It is such a
City.
beautiful town. I was just
Yeah.
walking around town, city town,
Yeah.
sit town.
And the seasons are changing and it's getting cooler,
Very
I'm sure right
much.
now.
It is
Oh.
crunchy and beautiful and orange and lovely. It really is nice right
Oh.
now.
Oh, that's great. I love it that time of year. Well, welcome to the show. Let us talk about writing, which is something that you do a lot. You write a lot of books. You have been around the block. You have been doing a lot of the things, and we could talk. We could take this conversation in many different directions. But first of all, let's focus on how you get it done. Because I always go back to process. How are you actually fitting writing into your life?
Yes, this is the question that I think all of us as writers want to know from every other writer we meet, because it is such an ongoing, dynamic, perennial question that works. Any given system, I think, works, I don't know, 60% of the time, if we're lucky, and has to
Yeah.
be renovated. The rest of, don't you think that
Yeah,
any
I think that's a
system,
very good a good
yeah.
percentage to grab. Yes.
And like if it's working 60, I'm rocking
I'm
that.
happy.
Like I
Yeah.
will completely accept 60. And I tried to do the math, and it's always really funny when poets do math. But I was trying to do the math one day when I was having sort of an unproductive streak about how if 50% of the time I hit my sort of perfect targets for writing, then is that 5,000 times more than, oh my gosh, we should probably delete this part because this is embarrassing how badly this math
No,
is
it's
going.
delightful, and we're all
But
feeling the same way. Yes. Yes.
but anything is better than nothing. And we do the best we can, and writing is one of many ways we live in and absorb the world. So I do think
Yes.
it is important. I feel as I get older, I am a lot more forgiving of myself for my systems being more human and less machine, which is maybe another interesting topic these
That's
days.
I think that's the most and I think that is one of the most important things for writers to learn is that as writers we will always make plans and goals and we will always fail to hit them. And by
Always.
making plans and goals and always remaking them and rejiggering, it doesn't matter. We learn to not care when we don't hit it and we end up with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands more words than we ever would have had we not. But I still, honestly, my goals, I'm probably more like a 40 to 50% hitter of my goals. And I don't care. I still get a ton done. So it sounds like you are the
Yes.
same kind of person.
Yes, totally. And that is a lot. Like one can produce a
Yeah.
lot of books hitting
Mhm.
40% to 50% of the time. And
Exactly.
two quotes and two quotes that on this end comfort me. One is a Thoreau quote that I'm going to botch the specifics of, but something to the effect of, why would someone feel they need to be productive every day, all day, every day? A chicken only lays one egg a day.
I love that so much. Okay. I needed to hear that. Yes, I need to find that one and print it out and put it up in
It's
front
a
of me
good one.
because I am always feeling like I need to be productive all the
Yes,
time.
yes, yes. Google
Yeah.
throw chicken egg. But in terms of the sort of logistics of what I do expect of myself, however much or little I succeed in it, I am a morning writer, like I think so many morning writers. And it felt like one of those arrivals at the human condition that starts to happen probably around after about age 29, when we hear people say, oh, in order to get my writing done, I needed to wake up at 5, or childbirth hurts, or death takes a long time, or marriage can be a struggle. And you think, well, that's fine for you. But my childbirth won't hurt, and my marriage won't be a struggle, and I will not wake up at 5 a.m.
And
because
my first draft
yes,
won't be crappy.
my first draft won't be crappy, and all these things. So it's been one of those wonderful, hey, human, meet the human condition, comings of age of realizing that actually the best time to write for most people is in the morning because the day is so clean, and it's
Mhm.
completely worth being charmless after 9 p.m. because you get to wake up to a project.
Exactly. I'm charmless after 8.
Yes,
I'm
me
headed
too.
to
Me
bed
too.
to bed by 8:30.
Yeah, that's a nice
Definitely.
time.
Definitely. So
Yes,
you get up
yes.
early. You
I
you
get up
you
early.
hit the desk. What are you doing at the desk? How are you
Yes.
working?
Yes, let's get granular. So
Yes, please.
I much prefer working out of the house than at home. But that is met by how important it has always felt to me to be portable. And I don't know why that was such a value. I remember in my 20s having conversations with friends, I'm 45, where people would say, I want to be famous, I want to be rich, all these things. And I remember thinking, that's great, but I want to be portable. And I don't know why that felt like such a deeply important goal, but it has guided my life. I teach online. I've
Oh,
taught from everywhere from having my computer on top of a toilet seat in an Airbnb in Capitola Beach
I
to in
have
sort of
done I have
weird
done that.
ballrooms.
That
Yes,
exact
you can
same
do
thing.
that.
Yes.
You can have an amazing class in the strangest of circumstances. I've taught like on top of bunk beds. I've taught in people's office. I could teach anywhere. And I think that as a writer, it has always felt very important to be able to write anywhere. I know some of your guests have talked about that too, whether it's a cafe or in the car or in bed. I love being on vacation and writing in bed. Um, or it just anywhere. But I do feel that because I think part of the fun is sort of, for lack of a better verb, Rapunzeling myself in a place where I can't sort of escape the tower until I've done my writing. It does, you
You
know what
are
I mean? It
cracking me
does
up. I
help.
am like I'm dying Rapunzeling. I do it in this recliner. If I get far enough into that recliner, which I bought for this purpose, and I can't reach my phone, but I can reach my coffee, I cannot get up until I am done writing. There's nothing else for me to do.
There's nothing
Yeah,
else for you
I'm
to do. It's a really
Rapunzeling.
lovely, you're Rapunzeling, you've
Yeah.
Rapunzeled yourself. It's really a lovely trick. And so a lot of good writing, and I think that it's crucial that one of the things that I've come to see, and I wish it were the same for every single writing project because that would be so convenient, but it isn't. But I feel that each project has its own logic of
Mm.
routine, of ritual, but each one does need its own time, place, and treat. Don't
Tell
you
me
think?
more. Time, place, and treat.
Well, time, place, and treat. So I learned this when I was in graduate school and doing my dissertation, and I was not working well at home for all the reasons, bad corgi, housework, new spouse. But I found that if I got on I think it was the 9:19 bus, I could get to campus by 10. And I found that I fell asleep in the libraries, but I could go to Gregory Gymnasium, which was this Division 1 beautiful athletic center with a hot tub, so you could like go there after work and take a dip. So I always brought my bathing suit. So I would get there, and there was a Starbucks downstairs, and there were drinks there that I would never drink now, with like, oh my gosh, like orange mocha chip stuff, like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
but I loved them in my 20s. And so I would get off the bus, go there, get some sugary, sugary, sugary drink. That would be the treat.
Hmm.
And then I would walk to one of the tables at Gregory Gymnasium and arrive there around 10. And so I would write my dissertation from 10 to 2. And that was the time, place, and treat. And just by following that 5 days a week ish, 50% of the
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
using the bribery, talk about double treat, I would bribe myself with half price student massages. So I really wanted to show up. And the
Oh,
thing got
yeah.
written in record time. And no one ever thinks that the dissertation is fun to write. And most people, encourage others not to read it. And many people graduate without writing it because they find that part so miserable. But I found it to be my first taste of a real writing routine that made me feel like I can do this and I can
Yes.
show up and I can have a lovely way to spend my day that is creative and problem solving and not running around my relationships creating problems so that I can creatively solve them. Like it just sort of solved so many problems. And I got this thing done and I got to become Dr. McKetta and I just loved it. So that was the lesson. And then after that, each book I would start thinking that the old time, sort of looking for a new time, place, and treat, but always expecting it to have to be a little bit different. One
Hmm.
book was at my midwife friend's birth, her sort of like lactation center between, 8 and 12 when my daughter was at school. The treat was herbal tea. It changes, but there's always like a place where the book lives.
What was the time, place, and treat for the most recent book, Edit Your Life?
Oh, that was a lovely one. That one was in Cornwall, England, where my family spent a lot of early COVID,
Oh.
and still spends a lot of time. And it was in a beautiful hotel overlooking the ocean. The treat was an oat milk cappuccino, and the time was after walking my children to school, so from about 9 to noon.
But right now, the book I'm working on is the cafe down the street. It is on a cricket field, and it's a particular pot that they brew of the English breakfast. And
Oh,
that's my well, and my time is usually nine to noon. So
nine
yeah,
to noon. Isn't that a nice amount
time,
of
place, and
time? I
treat.
feel
Yeah,
that,
it's perfect.
I mean, and I do think that we as writers are sort of born into what I call like the Hemingway myth of, 8 hours. This idea that we need to be at a typewriter for a full day.
I would
And I think it's such a
die.
delight. It's
It's
right,
it's
me too.
so difficult. And they've
We'll
proven they've
fail
proven
every
that our
day.
brains tap,
Yes.
even masters tap out between 2 and 4 hours of
I
deep
love that
work.
research.
I know.
I love looking at the charts and feeling like, because don't we all as writers come to the same things? I feel we all
Yes.
come to the same conclusions. And one of them, for I think, certainly for me and for many writers I know, was we sort of naturally gravitated to mine is 90 minutes to 4 hours. Like that range
Mhm.
is plenty and gets shorter as I get older. I don't know what to make of that, but I think probably I'm a more efficient writer, right? And probably have
Well,
more
that is,
non-writing
and
time.
I think that is definitely true. We do become more efficient writers, thank God, because
Right.
the early
Good
times we are
point.
not that efficient,
True fact.
right?
True fact. Exactly.
What
It's
it?
so funny.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I was just sort of riffing off of this funny idea about how writers all, no matter what our genre, no matter what, our experience level, all hit our heads on the same problems. And so I'm thinking about how we all sort of come to our own solution of, the 2 to 4, generally speaking. And another problem that I've solved on my own and that I've been so that I've been so delighted to see how many other writers have solved identically is whenever I hit a stopping point. Well, I should probably ask you how you solve this because I bet you solve it the same way. When you hit a point in a book where you need to go look something up or you need to go into detail that you don't have the bandwidth or information for, but you don't want to lose the flow of writing, what do you do?
I put a either an asterisk or a TK or just like a underlined spaces. Just something that I will
Exactly.
easily fill in later. And then, so we all figure this out kind of the hard way. But isn't it fun to go back and fill those in? Like it takes
So fun.
zero brain power later. Like, oh,
So
it'll
fun.
take it'll take 30 seconds to Google that. Rather than
Right.
if I had stopped to
Yes.
Google it, it would
Oh,
have taken me 2 hours and I never would have gotten
right.
back to that sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like replacing your toothbrush. It's so easy. And I love how every writer in my class has invented their own. Mine is XX. I'll just leave an XX there because you can search it.
Mhm.
And I remember telling my class this, and many of them sort of got, you know, surprised looking because they said, well, I invented XX. And it turns out my dad also invented XX. Everybody invented XX because it's
I have
like,
used XX.
right?
Yeah.
XX is a great,
Hmm.
you invented XX. It's brilliant.
Or
Writers solve
I also
problems.
do all caps a lot too. You know, she reached down and picked up the all cap
Ah,
word something. So something is all in caps,
yes.
and that's another
That's a
cue.
good
But
way.
oh,
That's a good way.
it's so good. Speaking of these exciting things that we have learned, what is the most exciting thing that you've ever learned about your particular writing process?
Yes. I feel that probably like many writers, I learn the same thing over and over and over, and I'm
Yes.
constantly delighted to find it and will sort of produce it and tell it to the people in my life. Like, did you know that I just realized? And they'll say, well, you actually realized this 12 years
Oh,
ago.
totally, totally.
And it's delightful each time. So there's so many of them. Let me count the ways, but it has been delightful many times to realize that writing is a forever homework. And that it's a forever homework and that I will
Yes.
never wake up without a project. It's
Yes.
so wonderful. I never have to wake up without a project. I just love that. And the sort of waves of that fact has felt like a revelation at many different points. And there are definitely times where I wish I didn't have homework, but overwhelmingly, at least 40% of the time, it's so lovely. So that's a big one. Um, what are some
That
other ones? I think
that
that
is a beautiful one. Yeah.
thank you. I also feel to the portability point, delighted to realize and have realized this many times as well, how much for writers, writing is actually home,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're in New Zealand, you might be in New
Hmm.
York, you might be next door, but at the end of the day, like you live half in this world and half in this world that you're writing about. And by the act of always having this kind of underworld you return to, like you are always home,
And I
unless
think
you're
those
between books, and then that's weird, you
then
know?
that is really, really weird. And we try not to
Yeah,
be in that space for too long, or at least I don't. But I think that those
no.
two ideas are really integrally linked, that we will always have a huge project that we are completely passionate about. We'll always have this homework. And also that huge project that we're passionate about will always be our home. Is in realizing those two things in conjunction over and over again is something that gives me so much ease. If my brain can work, my I will always be able to be excited about something. It's
Yes,
I will always have
that's
something I
it.
can't stop thinking about.
That's
Yeah.
it. And don't you think it just feeds up everywhere? I just
Yep.
feel so, I don't know, I feel so lucky that I have a place as a
Yes.
writer to put everything,
Yes. 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 Everything is grist for the mill. Oh my gosh, I am
everything.
really enjoying this conversation.
Me
What
too.
what part of writing do you struggle with the most?
Oh my gosh. So I have divided writing as a way to sort of cope with the fact that sometimes it feels easy and sometimes it feels hard into various organizational mechanisms. I come from lawyers and engineers to try to sort of understand how to make it easier. And of course, the answer
Hmm.
is they're never going to be easy, and that's why we do it. But I've started to think of it in seasons. Um,
Mm.
it sort of it sort of eases my witchy soul, and it also
Hmm.
just feels nice to not get the seasons confused or spend one season longing for the other. And so I think of it um, as sort of the spring of writing. And I actually have a class that I lead with this model. I think of the spring of writing as where we're just kind of, I don't know, we're thinking slowly, we're creating, we're just sort of throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like it doesn't,
Hmm.
we're not asking if it's any good. We're just asking, does it exist? Is it alive? This sort of fun draft, play draft. I have young children, and I think of this draft as their equivalent of making cardboard hotels for their stuffed animals. It's the pure
Right.
play, the fun, the non-judgy, the part that's often disparagingly called the therapeutic draft, which I think let us not disparage the therapeutic draft because we do this because it feels good. The draft where we figure
Yeah.
things out, where we feel a little bit wiser, perhaps, because we've sort of put something in writing that's no longer jangling around in our soul, fiction, nonfiction, or poetry, doesn't matter. So I think of sort of the first season as just pure create. And I love that season. And I do it quickly and I do it joyfully. And then we shift from there to the next season, which I find harder, which I call the craft, which is really just to say make it better. So that
Hmm.
might mean rereading books that I would like my book to sit on the shelf next to one day, and really trying to understand how does this author follow a sort of philosophical tone with an absurdist humor scene that lightens it. How do authors do things? How do you write a sex scene? How do you write a horror scene? How long
Hmm.
are chapters? All of those craft questions about how do I take this lovely compost and make it better? And so we dwell in the craft, and that's revision. And I think I've never gone scuba diving, but I imagine the metaphor holds of there are times in revision where you don't know if you're going up or down, right? Where you're
Yeah.
just sort of in the darkness and in confusion. And so that's why I think revision can feel quite difficult, because when a draft is done because you can write the end, or there are no big holes in it except for a few XXs or asterisks. But
Right.
um,
Right.
but with revision, it can go in all directions. So the craft season has, I think, different chellenges, and for me takes longer than the first season. And then the third season, I've given it a word that helps me feel less afraid of it. But I think of the sort of selling, marketing, author in the world season as the connect season, because that's really what
Ooh,
we're
yeah.
doing is we're
Hmm.
connecting, right? It's the connecting our work to the world and connecting our ideas. We hope to readers across time and place. And we're sort of holding hands across the ether and saying, here you go. And I used to be very afraid of the connect season until I christened it connect, because it's hard to talk about money and it's hard to put markers on your book that it probably won't match up to. But in terms of the connect, it's fun to think about talking to a writer on a podcast or
Yes.
doing a reading
Yes.
in your favorite bookstore. So I now think of that I've evolved to like the connect season quite a bit, but I do find that it needs good boundaries, because I think that for those of us who want to go back to the next book, we don't want to spend 10 years or even 1 year, or for me often even 6 months promoting a book. We want to write the next one. So
Hmm.
I find that I'm very much happiest in the create stage. um I can work I beat my head against the wall with the craft stage, but it's growing on me too. And the connect with good boundaries, I think of it as like a badly behaved dog that needs to go into a crate for dinner parties but otherwise you love. And so then I like it on those terms. What about you? What
I
are your favorite stages?
My favorite stage is the craft. The create freaks me out. I do it and I love it, but it does freak me out. The craft and I just my mind just exploded when you said that thing about the diving, because I remember when I learned that if somebody is scuba diving, if somebody is really, really far down, they cannot tell. You would think, oh, don't we float to the top? We do
Right.
not. When you're far enough down,
Sounds so
we do not
scary.
float to the top. You can be floating to the
Wow.
bottom. And that is what it feels like in revision, but I love it. That's where I spend,
Oh,
oh, it's just my joy, my joy. And then the connect has always been difficult. But the thing is, I love that you put this name on it. I'm going to try so hard to remember it. Connect rather than marketing promotion. Because here's the thing is when I find a book that I love, I reliably go sign up for that writer's email list. And when they have a new book come out, I'd be furious with them if they didn't tell me. I signed up to connect with them because I am saying, I want to buy your next book. Please
Yes.
tell me
Yes.
about your book. We are not ever
Yes.
telling our the readers who want to read us, we are not bothering them by saying, "Hey, I have a
Exactly.
book. You're gonna like it. Here it is." And
Yes.
if we do bother them, then they can
Exactly.
unsubscribe, and that's
They can
also
unsubscribe.
preferable. But
Right.
it is connecting. It is, and I want those
Yes.
writers to connect with me. So why do I feel funny about reaching out to
Yes.
connect with my
Isn't
own
it
readers?
funny?
Yeah,
I know. I really appreciate you're saying that about signing up for the email list because I think we as writers, we know this is fun. We probably have some sort of American puritanical guilt about things that are fun.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so it
Yes.
feels gratuitous somehow to
Yeah.
ask people to read our work. But it is one thing that I tell my students, and then of course, as teachers, we eventually learn it ourselves or try to, is that rather than thinking of it as banging endlessly on the door, that we need to sort of think of how we can be the gifts to the door. How can we
Yeah.
write things that and be the kind of literary citizens that people that are joyful to collaborate with and that consistently produce good work and that a door would be lucky to open to these writers. That's what the goal is, I think. And it feels a lot nicer than just the knocking rejection, which is of course part of it. But
But it
paradigm
is a part of
shifts.
it that we are all strong enough to handle. And to go back,
Yes.
I'm just looping back to what you said about the seasons, and connecting that to our happiness always about always having this forever homework. I think it is a part of age too that I've noticed that every time a new season starts now, I'm like, oh boy, spring's my favorite. And then, oh boy, summer's here. Oh boy, I can't wait. Oh boy, fall is coming and winter's coming. Like we can have the same joy over these seasons. Like, oh boy, connect season is coming. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm gonna get there.
Yes, we are. This is so funny. This is a bit of a sidetrack. So if this is too far, delete this from the air. I have discovered 2 years ago, and I don't know why it took me this long, almanacs.
What's that?
Almanacs.
Oh,
Almanacs.
almanacs. I heard almond
Almanacs.
knacks.
No,
Almanacs
no,
are
no. I know. The
beautiful.
almanacs are beautiful. I know. And I can't seem to stop talking about them. And in fact, I was going on about them at a New Year's Eve party where I could see people like sort of nervously looking around to see like what other seats were available. And one of them was
I would
listening
have come
very
to sit by you.
patiently. Yeah, I know you would have. We would have had a lot of fun. Almanacs are the best. One of them thought I was talking about Armagnac, I guess like a kind of like,
Oh,
I
the
don't know.
liqueur. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Almanacs, though, but you read an almanac and you really get excited for the season because instead of feeling like winter is interminable, you think, oh, this is the season of, bare branches and of regeneration and of mushrooms and of seeing the sky in a different way and of sweaters and hot water bottles and
Mhm.
fireplaces. It's so lovely to have an
Did you
almanac.
did you read Catherine May's book
I
Wintering?
loved it.
Okay.
I
I
loved it
assumed you would have.
so
Yes. Yes.
much.
So so
Oh,
so so good.
so, so, so good.
All right. So what are you personally really good at writing wise?
So I think that the sort of superpowers that that I feel are pretty consistent for me are that I very much love writing with like a sloppy Labradorish enthusiasm. And I think that that hasn't gone away, despite the fact that many writers who are much more skilled than I am and probably have much better discipline have shed the love over the decades, and I never have. And so I feel like if I've gotten this far, like I really, really am in love with writing. And I feel that is no small thing when
Yeah.
it becomes really hard, depending on this season.
What do you love about writing?
Oh my gosh, so many things. But wait, there are more superpowers. Can I tell you
Okay.
two more?
Yeah, yeah. Please do. Please do.
One of them is I'm very organized. Sometimes that leans too far to the, and I know you've spoken about this, about the sort of productivity as procrastination tool.
Yeah.
Let's right. So sometimes it goes too far, but I love planning a book, thinking about tools for writing a book, thinking about just sort of the support, the sort of yoga block, versions of what writers need to support ourselves in a way that feels good and feels
Yeah.
organized.
Yeah.
So I think organization has definitely been something that I've been able to help myself with and really convey to my students and help them with as well. And then finally, and this is I think a huge one that we as writers don't really talk enough about, I'm really good at letting go.
Mm.
And I think that that helps me a lot, both in terms of writing a lot that I know will not be published. My first, I mean, like many writers, most of my four first novels are completely unpublishable. And probably 90% of what I write will never be seen. And I accept that and I still choose writing. And I think that the letting go and doing it for the fun of the homework, while also wanting a readership, I think I feel really helps me not sort of care that much about the things that discourage writers, which are usually in the connect realm, right? Oh, it didn't sell.
Hmm.
I got a bad
Hmm.
review. Like, oh, no one will publish it. I feel that like I've certainly been discouraged. But I feel it's a little harder. I think it's a little harder.
Okay, I have a new game that we're going to play right now, and it's called the lightning round. And out
Oh
of
my
those three
gosh.
superpowers, I'm going to ask you to answer. Um, for for the love of writing, the superpower love of writing, um, please name three things that you love about writing.
Oh, the solitude,
Solitude.
the fact that reading is always a requirement,
Yes, yes, yes. That's part of
and
the
the
job description.
and the sort of godlike power of getting to make a world.
They could not have come up with better ones. All right, next lightning round. As to being very organized, what are one to three of your favorite tools for being organized?
Index cards.
Mhm.
I love index
Colored or
cards.
not?
Both,
Okay.
both. For yes, yes, both. Yes, and
All.
yes, and also the Mac sticky notes so that I can just sort of tell myself what today's writing task is. Those little like, pretty stickies.
The ones
I
that
don't know.
are actually on the screen itself.
Yes, I don't know why I love them so much,
That's so
but I
great.
love them. I think they're beautiful. I love having like sort of a circuit of things that I ask of myself on a given day as a writer and as a human who I hope is supported in terms of being a better human by her writings. So it's just sort of my
Yeah.
little circuit of like, here's the thing you do for your body, here's the thing you do for your book, here's the thing you do for your work. Dump some love on your people in this way. So I have those there, and it feels um, like I don't have to sort of invent everything. I can just like follow
Yes.
the boss of the sticky note, right?
I have had a spreadsheet of this in the past where I assign myself
Have you?
points for
Yes.
each part. Did I spend time with my partner? How many points did I get for,
Yes.
and it's a checkoff list just to remind myself.
Oh,
Yep.
oh my
Yep.
gosh.
I
Oh, my heart
also
is
love organization.
checkoff list.
All
Checkoff
right.
list. I love checkoff list.
And then last part of this lightning round, in terms of letting go, how would someone who's not so good at letting go of being precious and in love with the words and scared that they won't all be used, could you give them one tip?
Mhm. That you will write more tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking in my head, I don't know if I could answer that question. And then you answered it beautifully. You'll write more tomorrow. You're just going to write more tomorrow, period. You do lightning rounds real well. Okay. All right. That was
It's a
beautiful.
good game.
I can't wait to ask you this question. What is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
This one I love. And this is also ludicrous, but I feel like grand gestures, right? Like we writers
Yes, yes, yes,
understand grand
yes.
gestures. This is ridiculous, though. I built myself a shed in the
Mm.
backyard so that I could write in it. And I did it after I'd published exactly one poem for exactly
That's awesome.
$0.
Perfect. And when you say you
But
built, did you hire someone to build it? You didn't build it yourself.
I hired someone. Oh no, I did not.
Okay,
I
yeah.
did not
I was
hire
gonna say that would be
someone. I did hire someone. Yeah, I could not have
yeah.
done that. But and it was actually intended to be. I'd read Annie Dillard, and I knew, and I just
Uh,
admired sheds. I like
yeah.
sheds. I'd read Walden. I just like sheds. I've always loved living in tiny spaces. They're so cozy. You don't have as many distractions, which
Mhm.
isn't good for writers. You could just have your sort of little cozy womb world. And so I really intended it to be a tough shed, just like a Home Depot, plop it in the backyard. But my wonderful husband, who takes my dreams and builds them into wood, had the idea that it could be a mother-in-law slash guest
Ah.
house slash, which I thought was a pretty good idea. So it ended up being this sort of, we still call it the shed, but it ended up being like a really beautiful shed. Our architect, it had an architect, called it a Zen-in-law.
So,
Is that
I
funny?
love that. That's really
A
good.
Zen-in-law. And so I built myself a writing shed so that I could write books in there. And then there's another story there, which I write about in Edit Your Life. But then for 3 years, pre-COVID, we moved into it as a family so that
Uh,
we could, have a big life in a small place. So that was a total grand gesture that was ridiculous. But I've come to think that a writer, there sometimes it doesn't feel, sometimes it feels like a grand gesture is something that you then need to write your way up to. You need to become the
mm,
writer that
you are
deserves that
you are giving it to the
investment.
writer that you know that you can be and that you
Yes.
will be, and that
Yes.
is your vote of confidence in your in
Yes,
yourself. And I think that's
exactly.
why I love asking this question. That is
It's a great
such a beautiful
question.
answer. And I want a shed so,
I want you to have a
so
shed.
badly. Well, my
I
wife
want
would
you to have a
also want
shed.
the shed. So we would have to have some kind of shared shed experience. And we only have
Morning,
one
afternoon.
spot. Yeah. Ooh, because I am
Yeah.
the morning person. I've never thought about
7
that.
to noon, noon to 7 could be good. And both people be tight, have to be tidy. Can I ask you that same question? I would love to hear what your biggest investment in yourself as a writer has been. Probably
Oh,
there have been many.
kindest thing I've ever done for myself as a writer. I think there have been many. And at this moment, I think it was quitting my job, my old day job, when I was not sure
Huge.
if I could bring in enough money to pay my half of the mortgage. And not only
That is
that, but
huge.
I quit the job early. I had planned to do it in like July of that year, and I ended up doing it in February or March that year because my mother-in-law in Boise was ill and dying. And
Wow.
I thought, why am I trying to get 4 more months of money or 5 more months of money or whatever it was? And I just went in and quit. And I am a person who is responsible to their teeth. I have,
Wow.
puritanical work ethic. I will never, I can't,
Wow.
how can I
Yes.
do this? And then I did it. And it was the
Wow.
biggest, scariest leap of faith ever. And it's been nothing but magical and wonderful. And that's why we are
So
able to live in New
brave.
Zealand. But
That is
it
so
was,
brave
now I can see it
and
as kind.
awesome.
Back then I just thought it's
Yes.
terrifying.
Yes, exactly. But aren't
But
those two often the same thing, right?
yes, yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, why don't you
Because you
live here?
sort of, oh, this is so fun. I mean, I'll just come have to visit. I mean,
Okay,
because you
all right,
do
good.
like grow the psychic leaps, grow the psychic inches.
Yes.
That is really a cool one. I love yours.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Would you please now tell us about a specific moment that you knew you had ink in your veins?
Oh my gosh, there have been so many. And I think probably people who've known me would say it was like obvious long before maybe it was obvious to me. I could sort of go back to being like a, moody teenager writing in journals and cafes whenever I had a free time, and now being, a not quite so moody 45-year-old who like writes in journals and cafes. My life has not changed. But one moment when I really felt the ink in my veins that surprised me was when in the last year to two, a lot of my students have been emailing me afraid, wanting to know what my thoughts are about AI and how writers, like what kind of stance or philosophy or like where do we put our feet in this new era? And I've thought about that and worried about that and listened to Stephen Fry about that. Um, and and ultimately come to feel that staying up all night worrying about writers and AI is not a good use of time. We should be worrying about the world and AI, but that's neither here nor there. But as a writer, I was surprised to feel that I could let go of worrying about it all night when I thought, so yes, AI will be able to write quite good books in about 17 seconds. Already I've played around with it. AI is pretty excellent with structure. Currently pretty lousy with poems, so I don't feel quite threatened as a poet yet, but I will. We'll get there. But I thought, yes, of course, AI will change publishing completely, and I have no idea what that will bring, but let's accept that. And also, the reason I write is so much bigger than publishing. And will
Mm.
I still show up and do my homework and feel that writing rises upward through my life and feeds every part of it? Yes. Whatever
Mhm.
happens, yes. And so that was an ink in the veins moment of feeling like AI can't take writing away from me.
I adore it, and for some reason, I adore that. And for some reason, it put like Soylent Green into my mind. Like, would you be able to make a product that could satisfy every nutrient that a human being wanted, and give it to them? Yes, of course. We could do that. But do I want to garden my own vegetables and cook the kale that I grew? And I will always, always want to do that. It feels similar, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
You want to do that labor. Like that's your
Yeah.
toil.
And this came from somebody, I can't remember who it was because my partner told me about it, but they were saying that they've always watched baseball and they will always watch baseball and they would never want to watch computerized baseball because baseball is
Yeah.
in the humanity. Baseball is in the stories of those
Yes.
people on the field.
Yes.
That was my moment of being able
Yes.
to let go of the worry of AI. Oh, right. I do this
Yes.
because I am a human and I have to do this. And other people read because they have to connect with humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Hey, human, connect.
Yeah, and we're back to connect. Ah,
Yes.
fabulous.
Yes.
May I
Yes.
ask you, please,
It
what
is
is the
fabulous.
best book that you have read recently?
Oh, this is the question that I always answer ridiculously because I'm reading all the time, both published work in all genres and my student work, which is excellent. Um, and I find that I'm really bad at coming up with a book on the spot, which is really funny. And the time that I botched that the most was when I was a new teacher at Harvard Summer School when I had a 1-year-old. And I was a brand new teacher. I was still sort of a baby writer. I hadn't published any books, but I did have a shed. And I was surrounded by these incredibly inspiring colleagues who were all writers and readers and lovely, lovely people. And I was hoping that I would be, asked to be part of this community for years to come. And we were just getting to know each other and going around. And the obvious question is, what are you reading? And it's a question that is what I would ask everyone. Like, what are you reading? What are your projects? Like, those are the two great questions. And I love those questions. And I had a 1-year-old, and I might have been the only one who had a 1-year-old, or maybe even someone under 10. I was definitely like a lone ranger in that regard. And I remember watching the bead of this question like come closer and closer and closer to me with a sense of like increasing panic. Because I read all the time, but the only book that came to mind that could think about actually like having read recently, the only book that came to mind was Positive Discipline for Toddlers.
Because our brains go blank when we are asked this question. I hope you said that. I hope you said it.
You know what? I blocked out whether I answered it or not. I hope I said it too, but I also might have like I don't know how I answered it, but that was like I just remember the horror of that moment,
The
which now I
panic.
remember with such sweetness. So what? So let me think. Let me get the proper answer here. Books that I have loved, a lot of fiction. I also have really enjoyed my sort of guilty pleasure reading over the last decade. Again, as a parent who also works and teaches, is quite embarrassing. And is I had a funny conversation about it with one of my friends who is from Austria, who also has a new baby, and she said she was reading her guilty pleasure reading, which was fairy smudge, by which I think she means fairy smut,
Uh-huh.
kind of dirty
I
novels
like
about
I
fairies.
like
And
smudge,
she
yeah.
wanted to know fairy smudge. And she said she wanted to know what my dirty pleasure reading was, and I told her it was embarrassing and that it was time management. She's like, oh, and she went out and bought me some fairy smudge. Um, which is ridiculous. I've read a lot of books on time, but a book that I read on time that I think is I enjoy even more than Fairy Smudge, and that I think might be the last book in that genre for me because it feels just like I
Can
don't
I
know.
guess which one it is?
Yes,
And I bet I get it wrong, but is it Oliver Brookman by any chance?
yes, it's just
4,000 Weeks?
beautiful. Yes, it's just
It's
like so
life-changing, right?
philosophical. It is, and it's just like it's like this. It's like the world,
Yeah, yes.
right? It's just
And
so big
Elisabeth,
and so
for those of you
cyclical.
listening, Elisabeth is moving her arms in the air
Yes,
in a
just like
big
a
motion.
world. It's such a big, thank you for that. I forgot. Yeah. Yes. Oh,
It
it's just
it
the most
took
beautiful book.
it took so much pressure off of me when I read that because I will read
Yes.
all of the time management things. And for those people who haven't read it yet, basically Oliver says, my good pal Oliver, that I'm just calling him by his first name. He says, "You're never gonna do it all, so stop trying." There's your
No,
answer. You can't
that's
do
it.
it all.
That's it. You can't do it
Suck it
all.
up.
And you sort of feel like, how am I different from anyone else who's ever lived? It's such a Hey Human book. Like he talks about
Yeah.
medieval time management. And he gives this wonderful
Yes.
example. Like if somebody said, like, hey, I think I'm gonna, I'm gonna milk 30 times tomorrow and just not milk for the rest of the month. Like that wouldn't work, right? Like that wouldn't work. So I just love how he looks at sort of I think I need to read it again, but just sort of giving ourselves to time rather than like hoarding time is this
Yes.
thing that we can control. It's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. I am going to reread it too.
So good.
I've actually read that one twice, and I rarely reread books, but I need to because I can feel the calmness
Yes.
coming upon me
Yes.
just even thinking about the book. All right,
Yes.
and now I'm going to turn this
Yes.
conversation over to you. Will you please tell us about your most recent book? Give us a little bit
Yes.
what it's about.
Yes. My most recent book, hold on, it would be Arc. My most recent book is Arc. It's my first middle grade. The constellation of my books is definitely a weird constellation. I've not done the thing that writers are supposed to do of staying in one lane.
Me neither.
Um, nope, nope, they go everywhere, which does mean that the homework is always interesting. So my sort of um, my kind of constellation of last couple of books was my first novel, finally, in 2021, um, followed, or I think followed quite quickly with this really badass anthology of women's resilience stories. Um, and then an essay, a collection, a memoir, and then Edit Your Life, which is sort of a guide for, I don't know, kind of a reflective guide for thinking about our lives.
Which
Um,
I cannot wait to read. That is at the
it's
like
so
almost at the
beautiful.
top of my TBR.
Oh, it's
Edit
really
your life.
beautiful. It's really good. It's a good one. And then my first middle grade, which is about dogs and tiny homes. So it's just been this like wonderful, weird constellation, but they've all been just like so lovely and beautiful and different and fun and hard. And each one had their own time, place, and treat, as they do.
Time, place, and treat. Okay, and where can people find you out there online?
So probably my website, elisabethsharpmcketta.com with an S, Elisabeth.
Yes. You can spell all of those automatically and just know that it's an S in Elisabeth. And this has been such a joy. Thank you so much for being on the show. I cannot thank you enough.
This has
Honestly,
been
this
such
is
a joy. I
just
feel
what I
so
needed.
honored to be here, and this is just what I needed. And I look forward to future conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.